Before we officially begin our meeting, I would like Nick to come up front here. To everyone who's here, this is Nick Gallman. He is going to be our new Municipal Services Director beginning August 15th.
Happy to be aboard. It's an exciting transition from one community to the next, and there's a lot to look forward to with this community, and yeah, happy to be here.
I'm just impressed you're here before you start.
Try to gather as much information as possible, so look forward to it.
Do you want to introduce yourself? We'll go down the line.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know me. So
Pleasure to be aboard.
thank you for coming.
Don't scare him away.
I made him promise he wouldn't get scared away tonight. Okay, so I'm officially calling this meeting to order. The meeting was properly noticed. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Joe. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. No other visitors. So next, we move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brooke. And do we need to do roll on this because it has the financials? Yeah.
Andler.
Aye.
Moda.
Aye.
Curtis. Aye. Hammer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Next, we move to new business, and the first thing on the agenda is a presentation by Mallory Clevin from WPPI.
You want me to, do it here?
Yes, please. And the mic is the second
already
button.
on.
Already
Oh,
on?
There you
Okay.
go. He got you.
And your presentation was put in our packet together. Yep. So everyone has, I think, a copy of that. So, like you said, I'm Mallory Clevin from WPPI. I'm the senior rate analyst here. So I've been working with Michelle in Columbus on their electric rate application, which is what I'm gonna go over tonight with you. So first, I just want to go over some of the steps of the application process and everything that entails this. So we developed the rate application, and that includes three parts: the revenue requirement, the cost of service study, and the rate design. And those I will go over in a later slide in a little bit more detail. After the approval of the commission here, then the application, this will then be submitted to the Public Service Commission. After that occurs, then the utility will notify all customers of the pending increase in rates, and that's done with a utility bill insert. And in there, it details what the overall increase is and what increase will be for a typical residential customer, and also information on how they can log in once the process at the PSC is done to participate in the hearing. That's towards the end of it. So then, while at the PSC will review the application. It will be assigned a auditor from the PSC and also rate analysts, so they'll have two staff. And data requests will occur, and we assist throughout the whole process. Then following the review at the PSC, like I said, a hearing will take place where the utility will participate and members of the public can also participate, and that's done through Zoom hearing. It's no longer in person. Then after the hearing takes place, the utility will inform the PSC of their expected implementation date, and this is based on the meter reading dates of the utility. And then the PSC will issue a final order, and then the new rates will become effective on that requested date that they requested. So right now, the PSC just recently came out. They had this on the water side, and now it's kind of moving towards the electric side where they have a 200-day policy. So from when it's filed to when it's finished, they want to complete it within 200 days. We have not seen that yet for any of our members that we have filed. So right now, it's higher than that, but with the process of the PSC now has this new web-based application, and actually Columbus will be the first of our members to file that. So we're hoping with that, along with their new policy, that it will hopefully shorten up the days that are at the PSC. So then on the next page, to go a little bit deeper into the parts of the electric rate application. So as mentioned, there were 3 parts: the revenue requirement, the cost of service study, and the rate design. So the revenue requirement, how much revenue does the utility need in total? So through that revenue requirement, we want to recover increases in the utility's operation and maintenance expenses since their last rate change, which in this case, their last rate adjustment was November of 2012. So almost 11 years ago, Columbus last adjusted their rates. The next part of the study that we work on after the revenue requirement is the cost of service study. So through this cost of service study, we evaluate whether revenues will cover the utility's cost of providing service by each individual rate class. So the cost to serve individual customers varies by customer type. So typically, we see that large power customers are generally less to serve than residential customers. So you'll see that later on in a table, our cost of service results and what it shows to actually serve each rate class. And then finally, after that, we work on a rate design or prepare a rate design for the utility. So we want to collect revenues from customers based on different rate components. So we want to collect demand through demand charges and energy costs through energy charges, including an on and off peak split. And then we also want to collect fixed and variable costs. So we'd like to have more of the rates collect more of the utility's fixed costs through those fixed charges, and then more of the variable costs through the energy charges. And then finally, we look at price signals. So how can we design rates in such a way that it sends a price signal to the customer to adjust their usage, and then in turn could lower their bill, which then in turn lowers the bill for Columbus overall. So those are kind of the things that then go into the rate design. And if you have questions throughout, feel free to stop me too. So then the next page, this table is showing the utility's overall revenue requirement. So this is showing an income statement for the test year 2023. So based on the utility's operating and capital budgets, we're projecting the utility will earn an operating margin or rate of return of 0.51%. And then, therefore, with all of that, the utility is requesting an overall increase of about 5.37%, or about $447,000 increase in revenues, to then earn a fair margin of 7%, or rate of return of 7%. So this is ultimately what Columbus is proposing to the PSC. But as I stated before, the PSC goes through their whole review process of their expenses, their plant, all of the things that we included in here. And so ultimately, the final increase that Columbus will see will most likely be lower than what they're proposing here, because they do go through a review and take a look at all of that. Also, then I wanted to point out too, I looked back at the last rate study that was completed in 2012 for Columbus, and that was actually only a 1.3% increase. So over the past 10 plus years, overall customers will only see, after this rate case is completed, about a 7.5% increase in almost 11 years. So. So then on the next page, some of the factors that we consider when designing the rates. One, as I mentioned, we looked at those cost of service results, and I will show that on the next couple slides. And again, mentioned, we want to recover costs of their distribution, of the utilities distribution costs through the fixed charges. So being the customer charges, the distribution demand charge, so that they can cover then those fixed costs. We also take a look at the comparison with the neighboring investor-owned utility, in this case was Alliant. We also look at the impact on individual customers and how we design those rates, and we look at the large power customers and how this increase will affect them. And then finally, again, price incentives. So how can rates be used to encourage customers in such a way that it lowers the cost of power for the customer and the utility in the long term? So now, with some of that, I just wanted to go over, on the next page, it goes over some of the specific rate design and tariff changes that Columbus is looking to make. So one is increasing those customer fixed charges. So right now, the residential customer charge is $7.45, so they're looking to increase that to $10. And then the commercial or general service customers also at $7.45 and looking to increase that to $11. Then for the small power rate class, that currently has just a flat energy charge, so it is only looking at overall kilowatt hours. So the utility is looking to propose a standard time of day, similar to the CP2 and large power rate classes where they have on and off peak charges. So it gives those customers ability to, if they can, change their usage, and in turn then will lower their overall bill. So right now Columbus has a optional CP1 time of day rate class, and so those customers along with the existing CP1 will all be in one rate class, and it will be all standard time of day and on and off peak rates. And then finally, they have a commitment to community rider, and that is just updating some wording in that and then updating the rates on what the charges are for each of the rate classes. So this next page then is going over the cost of service results. So this table is showing what we estimate the utility will collect in the test year under their present rates, which is that first left-hand column. And then the second column is showing the cost of service results. And this is showing then what should be collected from each rate class for Columbus to serve these customers. So this is just one of the guides or things we use ultimately in designing the rates. And there's a lot of factors that go into this, developing these cost of service results. So with that table then, and then the other things that I mentioned, like the comparison to the IOU, the impact to individual customer bills, this then next table is the proposed rate design by rate class. So this is ultimately what Columbus is proposing to submit to the PSC. Overall, the utility is requesting on that bottom line the 5.37%, but as you can see, it varies between each rate class. The CP3 or industrial rate class, you can see, is a little bit lower than most all of the other rate classes, but everything is kind of pretty close to that overall increase of the 5.37. Yeah.
What makes the athletic field floodway so much higher than anything else?
I think because that's just a smaller amount of revenue that we're talking about, and so that is going to inflate then that increase that we're looking at. It has, actually, the energy charge for that too is the same as the street lighting. So you're just looking at a smaller amount of revenue to begin with and then increasing that energy charge. And so the kilowatt hours and dollars are just a lot smaller of a bucket. And so it inflates that. And I think that's why you see that too on the cost of service results. It shows the athletic needs a 222% increase. So again, a small bucket of revenue that we're talking about, so it's going to have that higher percentage. But also over time, you know, if in the last cost of service results, if it showed it need 100% increase, well, you're not going to do that. And so over time, that just kind of inflates itself. It's hard to get it all done in one with a smaller amount of revenue.
So that's why there's such a difference between that and the cost of service and the previous?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So with those proposed rate design results, then this next page is showing then what a monthly bill comparison would be. So the first one, the average residential customer that uses around 642 kilowatt hours, they would see about a $5.38 increase in their monthly bill, or 6.4%. This information right here will be included in that utility bill insert that goes out to all customers then. And then a commercial customer that uses around 1711 kilowatt hours would see about a $14 or 14.84 increase in their monthly bill, or about 7%. And then finally, this last table is showing then the proposed revenue. So ultimately, the final proposed rates that I showed in that previous table, to then the comparison of Alliance current rates, and showing that by rate class. So the positive percentages are meaning that Columbus is better off than Alliant is. So there's only one rate class, the CP1, and it has to do with the alignment of Alliance rates to Columbus's, because they use like a different demand threshold, and so it doesn't match exactly to what all of those customers are. You'd have to look at each individual customer, and this is looking at a rate class as a whole. So I think that throws that off a little bit. But overall, the utility is almost 6% better off than Alliant, and this is based on their current rates. I believe Alliant is also in for a rate increase, and so we could see that percentage then increase beginning of next year. So.
Alliance the most equivalent comparison?
Yep, it'd be the closest to Columbus. Yeah.
So in layman's terms, we're just a much smaller community that we serve than what Alliance serves, so I don't understand how that works out. I'm sorry.
Well, I think if you went, like, if Columbus wasn't served by WPPI, then your wholesale provider would become Alliant. And so then all your customers would be seeing the Alliant rates instead of WPPI's rates.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So that's all I have for my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So what do you need from us? Do you need approval to move forward?
Yes, we need approval for us to file the application with the PSC and start the process.
Okay, So then I am looking for a motion to give approval to file with the PSC for a rate increase.
I move that we give approval for the proposed rate application to be filed with the Public Service Commission.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to present tonight. And yeah, have a great night.
Thank
You
for
too.
coming out,
Yep, thank you.
and we'll be in touch.
Yep, we will.
Next is Jason Letha from Rupert Milkie, and he's presenting on Task Order 2023-03, which is the 2024 street and utility improvements.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. So we're here tonight to present an updated memo for Water Plant 1. So as you all are aware, Water Plant 1 is the facility down here off North Water Street. And it's been there since the 1900s and early 1900s. And it was reconditioned in the...
We got a flip-flop.
Oh, we're talking... Oh, sorry. I thought... My apologies. I was so eager to talk about the water plant. It's exciting. Sorry, my apologies. The first item, which I should be talking about, is the Capital Street Plan and Utility Improvements for 2024. So the council has been recently discussing and I think it was last month approved a kind of a 10-year capital plan to look at identifying kind of future road projects in and around the city. And we've always kind of had a project list, but we haven't had a plan. And so they looked at funding alternatives and different projects and kind of aligned those two things to come up with what we'd call more of a comprehensive kind of a forward-looking plan. And that impacts the utilities as well, obviously. And when we were selecting those projects, all the projects that fell on the capital plan were really driven from a couple components. One was, what was the condition of the roads? What were the condition of the utilities? We want to fix the worst utilities and the worst roads because that makes the most sense to repair those things. We don't want to fix the roads and have bad utilities or vice versa. So as we developed that plan, and got that approved and look at some of the funding options, I had brought to the council at their last COW this task order. And as your engineer, my recommendation was a couple things. One was I would like to get into the habit of, now that we kind of have a forward-looking plan and we kind of know what those projects are a little further out in the future, I'd like to try and get a little bit further ahead of these projects. It seems like in the past we've always been designing them late in the fall and we've been constructing them in early spring, and that's a really kind of a compressed window. It's not such a problem for us to turn those projects around in that window, but what's historically happened is the residents or the businesses that are impacted don't have a lot of notice of these projects going on, and generally there's special assessments and costs that they bear to these projects too. Secondly, I think we've learned, and I hope it's a repeatable thing, that last year we were very early last year with our Folsom Street project for 2023, and we had bid that out immediately after the first of the year, and as a result, we got fantastic pricing from the contractors because the contractors were looking for work early in their bid cycle. And so our projects came in 25% under the estimated budget, and so we are seeing some real advantages to being out early. So we propose to get this project kind of kicked off for next year. And what it is it's kind of the projects that were selected was a collaboration of 3 different projects. So there is a 1-block section on Selden Street between Lewis and Charles. There's a 1-block section on Richmond Street between Lewis and Charles. And then we have identified Commercial Drive from Dix all the way around to Maple, and that's kind of our industrial sector. A lot of those businesses have approached the city and have asked for improvements out there, and there just hasn't been a lot of improvements in that part of the city for a period of time. So we'd like to bring this in front of the commission tonight to get your comments or feedback and look at moving this forward to kind of get started on that earlier schedule. As a result, there will be some impacts from the utilities. Now, although this is a fairly large project cost overall, the roadway components of the Commercial Drive project lead that total. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk of this. There's not a lot of utility improvements included. The one block sections on Selden and Richmond do contribute to the water and sewer, but don't have much for storm sewer either. So it's I think from a standpoint from the Utility Commission, it's actually a fairly low cost project in comparison to what we've historically done. It's a much higher cost for roadway improvements. So this task order tonight is a combination of the road work and the utility work. Now, historically, when I've been before you guys as a commission, we've always kind of had these split out. So you've seen we've had a utilities task order for authorization. We've had the city one. We've been combining them into one, so we were going to run this through the council, bring it to you, run it through them, and get final blessing, so it's all kind of packaged up. And if you look at the rate or the fee schedule on one of the latter pages, we did break out the engineering costs associated with the utilities because we know those are different accounts and they get accounted for differently between the city and the utility. And you can see that the cost for design for the water utility and the sanitary are relatively low percentage costs compared to the roadway design, and that's just a product of what I was talking about in relation to the amount of utilities being upgraded in this project. So this is our standard, get everything through bidding task order. So this is design, permitting, special assessments, public hearings. I plan to do some extra outreach with the businesses on the Commercial Drive project. I want to make sure that we're talking to them about impact to businesses, about timing, about all kinds of things. So I want to get started early and get out there and meet with those businesses and just kind of get them up to speed as well. So what we're asking for tonight is consideration of the entire project task order before you that will include the utility section that you guys oversee, and then this will obviously get us through that bidding phase to when we open bids, which we would expect that to be shortly after the first of the year. I think we'd run very similar schedule to what we did last year with hopes that we'll have similar results with the good pricing. So any questions?
So the 86,310 is the whole cost to the city?
That is, yes, that is the entire cost for the road and the utilities combined.
And the percentages that are listed on D on the last page, is that the percentage that the utility will incur?
That is the cost of the So when we do this, we take the total fee, so we design it collectively as one project, and then we look at what the estimated costs are for those sections. So the water improvements will be 8% of the total construction cost from a construction standpoint. And then we take those percentages and then apply them to our design fee, because there's really no good way to split up the cost otherwise in our minds. And we've historically done it that way. So we use the construction cost percentages and apply them back to our fee schedule. And so that's where you see the percentages on that last page. And that'll correspond to those totals you see in the table before.
And Michelle, do you have enough information to be budgeting for 2024? Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jason. Are there lead service lines in the two sections that you're, Richmond?
Oh, goodness.
Selden?
There are 4-inch water mains out there. With that being said, there are actually very few laterals because of the number of houses on those blocks. So there is a possibility that there is a couple out there, and I'm not entirely sure because I know I'm going to circle back obviously with staff and check to make sure, because if there are, we will obviously be replacing them, and then obviously we'll be identifying those private services if they are lead and notifying the residents. So I can't answer that emphatically right now, but I suspect we might find a couple.
Will we have an idea of DNR grants to be?
There was no funding this year.
Oh,
They changed the program, so next year, and we do have a program ordinance in place, The residential customer will have to contribute 50%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And kind of the question, your response with the lead services, I think there's only probably three, maybe, yeah, I think it's only about 3 houses that are fed off of those 2 streets.
Yeah, it's
Because of
it's-
the layout of it.
Yeah, so it is surprising when we started looking at it a little bit. I was like, well, there's all kinds of houses here, but none are really tied into the mains that we're replacing, so.
Yeah.
And when they are identified, they need to be replaced.
Yep,
Michelle, when we get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
because it is so few, can we make sure we reach out to those customers
Oh,
so that they know there's a program that would help with 50%?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
and what we'll do as part of the project too is we will probably give notice to those homeowners to go out and inspect just to know ahead of time what their material is. So we'll notify them when we identify that.
Okay, great.
What was the part about Inglesby?
Oh, my apologies. There is a section of road pavement on the end of Inglesby by the tennis courts, if you're familiar with that area. And so from Fireman's Park, the golf course parking lot, and the tennis courts, there's a section of pavement that is deteriorated pretty poorly in there. And somebody had approached us, staff-wise, I can't remember if it was Kyle or Brandon, or somebody had come to me this year and said, hey, as part of our street maintenance project, could we fix that? And it's just a little bit of an area where it's a little too big to handle under a maintenance contract. So since we are planning on doing a pulverize of the industrial area out on commercial, we're gonna pulverize it and then relay asphalt over top of it, reuse that asphalt as our base course. What we were hoping to do, we have the pulverizer in here. We were hoping to actually just get a price to do that work too, because we have the equipment and we have a much larger project, we can tack that on. So what I had proposed to the city when I came in is, let's design that. It's minimal effort for me to design it and put it as an alternate bid to the contract, and then we can get a price for it. If the price is favorable, the city can decide to fund it and move it forward. And I think that's probably as good a price as they'll get for the road work, is if we tack it on with something like this, especially since we have a lot of street work on this contract. So my hope was that it costs us literally nothing to put it on there. It's pretty quick for us. And then we'll decide if the city is in favor of making those improvements. Hopefully we can move that forward next year and get that fixed.
So that would be in addition to what you have proposed?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And that is, so as an alternate, so it's not a guarantee. We'll still put it out to bid, but it's not a guarantee that we'll do it, but it's in addition to this, yeah, correct.
Any other questions? Okay, so then you're looking for approval to move ahead with this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have a motion for Rupert Milkie to move ahead with the street project for 2024?
I'll make a motion for Rupert Milkie to move ahead.
Thank you, Brooke. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
I think we should do a roll call. 'Cause
Oh,
there's
you're
the
right.
yeah, there
Thank
dollars.
you.
And then, to add the dollars into the motion, the sanitary sewer is 9,211 and the water utility is 6,141. We used to do that with the task order, so I'm just asking if you would like
Yeah,
that.
can you restate the amounts and so that they can be built in?
The sanitary sewer utility is 9,211 and the water utility is 6,141.
So just to ask again, Brooke, do you amend your motion to match those dollar amounts?
I do amend my motion to include the 9,211 for sanitary sewer and 6,141 for, I didn't write it down.
Water utility.
Water. Thank you.
Joe?
And I still second.
Okay, so roll call then. Can I actually ask a question before we roll call? So we've got stormwater on here. Are we still just
The
taking,
stormwater went back to guidance under the city until and if it ever becomes a ratepayer-funded utility.
okay, so essentially, we're taking a loan from the general fund till it gets revenue. Okay.
Yep, that is correct. Okay. Hammer?
Aye.
Andler?
Aye.
Moda?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now, Jason can talk about his favorite thing.
I've been waiting all night for this.
So patient.
So back to water plant one. So again, water plant early 1900s, upgraded in 1940, 1960. So it's been obviously in use for the water plant for quite a while. Back in 2016, Rupert Milke prepared an assessment for water plant one. So at the time, the commission was looking at this aging water plant saying, what would it cost to build a new one? And so there was a cost developed in 2016 as part, I think, of our water system update. Actually, it was a kind of a add-on to that. And we came up with a cost at the time to replace water plant one. And I apologize, I don't have that along tonight, but I want to say it was in the $5 to $6 million range to replace water plant one. When I say replace water plant one, we based it off of the existing plant out at Water and Light, which is water plant two. So we said, let's just duplicate that setup because we know that it has what we need. We know that it has capacity, it has these certain things, and that's what we'd like to see if we built a new plant. And so we developed that and we provided it. At the time, there was some consideration given to looking at what do we do with the existing plant, right? So it's been there a long time. It has some needs. And I think at that point, the commission was just interested in knowing, like, give us a ballpark back in napkin what this, future cost is going to be. Because it's one of those things where eventually you guys are going to have to, address this, right? What are we going to do with one? What are we going are we going to build a new plant? And, there hasn't been a lot of development around, but we don't have a site picked out for a new plant, or there's still some unknowns with that. But it's good to kind of know that as development, and it's not if, development will start back up. And, we know that there's going to be certain areas around the city that'll be prime opportunities for doing a plant or, your water needs. And so, kind of flash forward, we've seen obviously some pretty sizable increases in inflation. We've seen some other things. And, as we kind of look at budgeting here and some of the needs for water plant one that exists today, because there's been some things that have come up that have needed to be addressed. The DNR has brought that to the city's attention and said, hey, there's some things here that need to be repaired. We know that building's not very efficient, right? It needs the actual envelope, the building itself, the structure, the roof, the HVAC. There's just things that are old. And so we kind of looked at that and said, well, the question came up, what does it take to refurbish? Like, what do we do to recondition, to get plant one, let's get some more years out of that versus the cost of building a new plant. So we said, okay, well, let's take 2016 numbers for a new plant. Let's refresh those into today's dollars. It's a little shocking, but the number goes up pretty substantial. But as you all know, everything's been going up. So we did update those numbers to where we think we're currently looking at for a cost of a new plant. And so that is the first section of the memo where we talk a little bit about, I think it's 6.2 million, not including design, legals, and contingency. So I think there's a 30% markup on that number. And so we get to, when you add in all the total costs, and again, when I say total costs, there are a few contingency things here. It does not include a well siting study. It does not include the cost of the land. It does include getting utilities there. So if we build it out in the middle of a cornfield somewhere, we got to get utilities out to it. So there's still some things here that are unknown. But with that being said, we can pretty closely estimate that comparable plant to two was come in just over $8 million. Now I'll put a caveat in there, and I think somewhere in the memo I had mentioned this, that there are some things with a new plant and a new well in another location. And I'll give you, for instance, we just drilled a new well down in the Village of Oregon, and none of the wells in Oregon have manganese levels in them. The new one's got all kinds of manganese. We're in town, so now we have to treat for it, right? So this does not take into account what happens if we have different water quality, which is possible. We could have radium, we could have, certain things that could pop up. You guys have good quality water in your wells now, and you have good capacity in your wells right now. And so that's something to consider. So leaving plant one and the wells down there to venture off and build a new plant somewhere could spell more costs associated with those requirements to get that water to the same quality or level, or treat it to, get it in your system as you currently have. So that is just one thing to think about. So then we talked about reconditioning, and when we looked at reconditioning, we looked at really two things. We looked at the building itself, and we looked at what's been, I guess, I wouldn't say mandated, but what's been identified by the DNR as repairs that have been needed. And, there are some things, and I apologize, I actually was having a conversation with staff and some of my staff after we've issued this memo, and there was some conversations about, well, there's equipment down there too that could probably be upgraded, right? There's equipment from the 80s, some of the booster pumps. There's one pump that doesn't have a variable frequency drive on that could use one. And so there are some things that are needed. Now, I could stand here and say that we do have contingency, right, in this estimate. So there are some costs that could cover some of those things. There are some booster pump estimates in the new plant. So if we were going to replace booster pumps, there's a $90,000 line item in there we could add to this estimate. But we weren't focused so much on the what ifs with equipment. We were more focused on the what do we need today. And so when we looked at the reconditioning, we looked at, and keep in mind for the reconditioning, we looked at the part of the plant that the water facility sits in. I mean, the building is much bigger, right? So there's areas or space down there that, just aren't part of, the water production side. And so we were kind of focused on what did it cost to repair that envelope. So if you look at that, we talk about, the precast concrete planks, reinforced concrete masonry units, steel doors, frames, windows, acoustic panels, painting, plumbing. So this is all just kind of general stuff to kind of, it's your maintenance. It's like when you take your car and get your oil changed, it's getting new tires on it. This is what this stuff really kind of is. We talk a lot about electrical. Joe can probably defend that there's some definite needs down there that we can do with electrical and get that up. This includes a generator, backup system, softeners, filters, wells, well pumps. So we are covering what we feel are like the basic components that we need to make sure that plant one is operational into the future. But I don't want you to sit here and believe that this is a brand new plant when we recondition it. It's a plant that's aged. It's a plant that probably still has needed costs, but this is going to get you in a much better position than you are today. So that number comes in. That number comes in at about 2.9 million. So again, that's roofing, painting, plumbing, generators, electrical improvements, HVAC. So I guess in conclusion, if you look at that conclusion section, again, just talking about some pros and cons, and they both have them. So we're not sitting here advocating this is where we think you should go, this is what we're recommending. We're basically saying there's some decisions that have to be made here. I talk about the wells, using what's there is beneficial versus new wells. There's potential issues there. There's drawbacks with the existing plant. It's not as efficient layout. It's just some loss of things there as far as just operations. And as time passes, we saw it in, from 16 till today, we saw a fairly steep increase in cost for the new plant. And not that even refurbishing the old plant's getting any cheaper. So as you look at the decision going forward, you have to be prepared to know that these costs are going to continue to go up. And really depending on the construction market and the pricing, who knows where those will go. We've seen things start to slow down a little in some areas. In some areas, they're still relatively high. So I guess in conclusion, I just said we want to encourage the commission and the utility to take these into consideration and look at a future potential growth plan. You don't need that capacity now, but as the city starts to grow and develop, when that happens, you're going to need some added capacity. And so can we get that out of our existing facilities? it might be kind of limited to what the possibilities are. A new facility, you can build in that growth and that capacity. So again, pros and cons here, but I think more so we just wanted to get these numbers in front of you, get you thinking about, what does it mean to fix up the old plant and run her for a while. Put some new tires on it, get some new oil in it and let her go for a bit. And, what does it mean to start clean and go out and purchase a new car, which is the option about building a new plant. And just kind of get you thinking about what those ratios are, how they compare to each other. And, there's some big numbers here, and those are things that, our bridges are going to have to cross eventually. Hopefully not for a long time, but, just wanted to get these numbers in front of you and update the memos. Again, the 16 memo didn't include the reconditioning. As far as some of the costs with the reconditioning, it's a little hard, but we did hire a bunch of contractors to come out, walk through with us, so we got actual construction pricing from contractors. We're not guessing because we're not contractors, and sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we're not so good at getting the right prices. So we feel like we got some good feedback, we got some good input. So again, I think we did our best here to try and get these in the ballpark for you to get thinking about those numbers and, try and answer some questions at a minimum.
I have two questions for you. So if the water plant is going to be replaced, we don't really have the land, right?
No.
So that's not even an option until there's land to purchase.
Yeah, and I think the water study, when we updated that back in 16, contemplated locations, right? And so it makes sense that you certainly would not want a new water plant anywhere near your existing plant. You would want that opposing, because to supply the system and feed the system and to operate the system to get good pressures and even distribution, you're going to want to have that in a different location. That would lend me to believe that an ideal site would be somewhere on the southern side or the western side of the village, kind of opposite of where you are now with your current plant and well. That doesn't exist, but we do know that there's land there to develop, and we do know that as that develops, that should be a consideration given to those discussions when we are talking to developers to reserve that land and make that available to us to help facilitate that new building in the future.
I'm directionally challenged. West is where from here? That way. Okay.
Yeah, so particularly the area I'm thinking about is down, the hospital direction, behind the hospital. There's land out, maybe not necessarily right by Enerpac, but, I think, you kind of have that whole corridor on the other side of Kestrel Ridge that, that whole area is I think a pretty good location, so.
Okay. And then I had noted when you were talking just about the reconditioning that there's old equipment that probably needs to be updated.
Yeah.
I mean, how much in addition to the 2.9 do you think we're looking at?
Well, for sure the booster pumps probably, whether that's adding VFDs or replacing the pumps. The pumps are old, they've been regularly maintained. I would say the utility staff has done a fantastic job with that, but like anything, it wears out. And, it is one thing. I do know that we have, I did look at that ahead of time, so that's a great question. We do have booster pumps on the new plant on the opposite side listed at about $90,000. So is it a direct comparison because it's more of a retrofit? But the pump costs are in there. So I would say that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of what those booster pumps would be.
Okay.
Those are probably the primary things. I mean, we are replacing under the replacement. I do think we're hitting a lot of the valves and different things in there. But I do think that is something that we could probably add in there that wasn't in there. And in all honesty, I wasn't even aware of it until Jake from the utility called me up and said, "Hey, how come there's not booster pumps in there? I'd love to have those replaced." And I was like, "Yeah, because we really didn't add them in." But yeah, I get that is something on your wish list. So,
So if we were to do the reconditioning, how much time, I know it's a ballpark, but how much
Yeah.
time do you think it would buy?
well, I think what you do is you really get the necessary things up and running, and I think you could extend the life of that facility for 20 years.
Oh,
I mean, you could. Now, indefinitely, who knows? I mean, what happens to the wells? You have to maintain your wells. What happens if your well capacity starts to shrink or something? And that's always the risk, right? So you invest the money into that plant, and all of a sudden you start having issues with wells. Maybe you start testing the wells with, who knows, maybe PFAS shows up. All of a sudden now you have to treat, for PFAS. Now all of a sudden you need to put in the filtration system for that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we should have just started over.
Right.
So there's always a little bit of those unknowns, right? So, but I would think if you could get a lot of these improvements in, you could certainly, I think comfortably know you could operate that for that type of time frame.
And we'd have to do bonding on this, right?
So if we were to build a new plant, is there any additional cost in decommissioning the old plant that's not considered?
Yeah, you make a great point there, because you certainly would have to do that as well.
So you had said you're just wanting us to think about this. I mean, are you wanting us to make a decision for the direction?
Well, I guess I would lean towards Michelle. I think our goal was to kind of bring the information for you and discuss it. We just want you to know that there's some pros and cons. We want you to start thinking about it. There are big numbers. The bonding is out there. I mean, it'll affect probably rates and other things associated with something this large. PSC approval, that all takes time. That all takes, some premeditated actions to make this kind of start moving. So if you're thinking about doing something, reconditioning is a little easier in terms of approvals and timelines. New wells, we'd have to look at land acquisition. I mean, we're talking years, right? This is something, and so we just want to at least get this out there to start saying, here's where we at. We're functioning fine today. I mean, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but we're not bumping up against this, but. I think at some point, this is just one of those conversations that we want to make sure that you guys are aware of. You're starting to think about, there are options out there. There are choices. And so I can't stand up here and emphatically say, I think you should go this direction or not. I mean, I can definitely see some benefits both ways.
Michelle, I think this question for you maybe. Since this was discussed in 2016, have we been building a replacement fund or anything like that?
No, I mean, we do have a replacement fund. It wasn't specifically for this, though.
Okay.
Would it be a good idea to start one?
It's definitely something we can look at.
How quickly do you think we'll need to act on this, whether it be recondition or?
I think the whole point was just to get it in front of you,
Okay.
to kind of set the wheels in motion.
And I think that what you're going to see is you could have a booster pump fail, and you're going to invest in plant one to fix that, because you're going to need it, right? You can't ignore that.
Right.
And there are redundancies in the booster pumps, but you also have a pump that doesn't have a VFD down there that probably should have one, because if that pump kicks on, you've got a couple 90s outside the plant, you'll probably rip the water main apart.
What's a
if that pump
VFD?
kicks on. So there are things down there that I think we could do.
Variable frequency drive, so what it ramps up.
Oh, okay.
So instead, right now, when it turns on, it's on.
Okay.
And years back, when the water main was old on Water Street and on Whitney Drive, when that pump would kick in, we would get water main breaks, just because of how that operated.
So it's really important to get the booster pumps on quicker than maybe some of this other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to stand here and say there's something that I feel pretty strongly about, it certainly would be a VFD on the booster pump, or even looking at booster pump replacement in the near term, because they are pumps from the 80s. Start thinking about age, nobody's getting any younger, right? So we're talking 40-plus years old pumps running down there. You have redundancy built into the system, but that doesn't mean you can't have multiple failures at some point. And so those are just good preventative maintenance things, in my opinion.
Is that something this commission would support?
Well, and I can have Jake look into some numbers. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Jason has numbers, but it could be more of a capital budgeted item.
I would like more information on that.
Okay.
And the chemical room and the electrical room, that was in the last DNR inspection, wasn't it?
Yes.
Did they give us a compliance date for that?
if I recall from when we had that done, it's when major work is being done on the plant.
Okay.
So
Then
you
you have to
basically
do it.
don't, then you have to do it. So if you're not really doing anything major, you can still continue to operate as you're operating.
So is a booster pump considered major?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
No,
No.
and they did have, that's a good point, they did have some compliance action issues. One was the overflow,
Yeah.
the overflow
Which
for the
were-
reservoir tank, that had to be repaired, and I think they gave us until 24 or something to do that, and we're actually
Correct.
working on that right now to get that into compliance. So
Great.
we have taken action on the compliance items that had a deadline, but were a few that, I think Joe is right, if I recall right, they were contingent upon other work happening, so.
Because the chem room, you know, it saves your electrical system to have it vented properly, so there's benefits there.
Yeah,
Well, if we can get more information on it, and then you'll know how to build it into budgeting.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
thank you very much. I promise you it'd be exciting.
You weren't wrong.
Exciting or expensive?
Good night.
Bye, Jason.
Next on the agenda is to adjourn to closed session under WISSTAT 19851C to consider the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to discuss a specific employee's compensation and a specific employee's evaluation data. Do I hear a motion to move into closed session?
I move to closed session for the reasons stated.
Do we have a second?
My second?
Any discussion?
Just, we have our, although he hasn't officially started, we have our new.
I asked him to join us.
Okay, very good.
So all those in favor? Oh, we have to roll call, don't we?
Yes. Yes. Motive,
Aye.
Hammer,
Aye.
Curtis,
Aye.
Andler. Motion carries.
Okay, we are in closed session.
What's first? We will be returning, yes.
Welcome back. Next on the agenda is to take action from the closed session. Do I have a commissioner who wants to attempt to make this motion?
Okay. First, let's look at where we are. Okay.
Should we take it in separate ones, you think?
No.
No, okay.
So for the,
Unless you think
No.
that you need to.
I don't know if we need to. So for a position of wastewater treatment operator B, the salary range will be from
As discussed?
as discussed. And the current operator B will be moved to the median as discussed with 25-cent per hour increase per certification achieved.
25 cents per certification. Yes.
Yes.
5 cents per hour per certification for
Yeah.
operator.
I apologize.
Okay.
You're correct.
And that will be in the, do we need to say in their offer letters? No, okay.
Okay, then, as part of this motion, to approve the operator A position be moved from exempt to non-exempt,
Yes.
and to approve adding the fourth position as discussed.
Exactly.
Okay.
I will second that. Do we need to take roll call?
That'll be a roll call, yeah.
Andler.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Moda.
Aye.
Curtis.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is to review the wastewater treatment plant job descriptions. Katie made a few revisions, and we just need to approve those revisions.
We will also have to, if I didn't make any revisions as to the FLSA status of the operator A. And the salary to the operator B.
Right. She went through and caught things, changed them to the municipal services director. On operator A, do you want to explain the first paragraph that you made the change on?
Sure, I just added, the operator A is the primary operator in charge per NR 114 Wisconsin Admin Code certification requirements for waterworks, wastewater treatment plant, and septic servicing and water system operators as the operator in charge. This position is responsible for maintaining the compliance of the WPDES permitted treatment facility. And I added that because in the description, it doesn't really address the fact that as my certification, the plant operates under my certification, or whoever is the operator A. So I felt like that's important to add to that, because if I were not here, you had to search for a new operator A. They need to be aware that, under this code, that you are responsible for the treatment facility by law, and if you do anything bad, you could go to jail.
The department, it says Department of Public Works, that should be changed
Yes,
to
I actually made.
Columbus Utilities.
Correct. I made another edit that didn't get to your packet. It should say Columbus Utilities, and so that was one that I've already made. Sorry, that didn't get to your packet.
And I understand that, you know, it was saying operator in charge per the NR 114, but to keep so that there isn't any confusion between wastewater and water, if we could, in your general purpose, just remove waterworks,
Yes.
remove water and water system operators.
I will
Just
do that.
remove those words. That way there's no confusion.
Absolutely.
It was waterworks, water system operators, and what was the other?
Waterworks
Yeah.
and water system operators.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Oh, I guess I did have one.
Yeah.
You talked about proximity to workplace, but I did not see that listed in the position description at all.
I don't believe it actually is in the position description. Would you like me to add that to it?
The utilities is in the, I mean, the electric and water is in the job description that day.
Okay,
So it's 30-minute response time.
all right, I will add that.
Any other? Okay, so with that, do we have a motion to approve the job description with the amendments mentioned?
I make a motion that we approve the WWTP job descriptions with the noted amendments.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Sandy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Number 8,
I actually
we took
included
care
that in
of.
number 6.
Yeah, we took care of that in number 6, so we're going to skip number 8. And then the last thing under new business is, would everyone be available to attend the commission meeting on August 24th instead of August 17th?
Yes.
Okay, it's 1 week later.
Okay,
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I should be fine.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to move the meeting to August 24th?
I so moved to move the August utilities meeting to August 24th.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brooke. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Utilities report, Michelle? Are you laughing at us?
Nope, she's laughing at herself.
Well, as you know, the water crew, while in electric is out helping, they have that water main break by Faith Church. And as you know, Nick went to help. A couple of weeks ago, we had an outage, which we talked about at our last meeting, that affected the hospital and that area. Just so you know, Nick came over and helped with that as well. And Waterloo crew came over and helped. So that was really nice to have that mutual aid in the neighbors that we have. I did send out emails that the 3 offers that were out have been signed and returned. We had one alignment start on Monday. We'll have a line foreman and alignment starting on August 7th.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then the following week, like Sarah said, we'll have the municipal service director starting on the 15th. So office personnel is doing very well. The one has a little over 2 months and the other one is going on a month. They're catching on quick. They have great customer service. Just getting to know the utilities industry itself is overwhelming, but they're doing fantastic. What else do I got? We'll be sending them to training probably in a few months just to get a better understanding. We'll get the accounting clerk going to some accounting functions, and then we'll have the billing clerk go to some user groups and some refresh stuff, and just so they can get better and more comfortable at what they're doing. We're getting desks cleared off and spaces set up. We're getting equipment and gear ordered for the new employees. So we've been busy, but it's a good busy.
Good,
So
good.
that's all I have.
Thank you. Future agenda topics. I do have one that I would like to put on here. I would like the commission to start reviewing the stormwater ordinance. Jason Letha has been working with Attorney Paul Johnson on some potential changes, and I would like us to discuss that either start discussing it at the next meeting or the following meeting after, depending on how far the two of them get and when they get it done. Are there any other suggestions for future agenda topics?
Just so you're aware, we'll start putting draft capital projects to start to bring them forward. Before we get into all the expenses budget, we try to get the capital one put in place. So I've been working with Dalton and Jake on those right now. We have the projects in place, and obviously, we're gonna want Nick's input when he's on board, you know, just to kind of, so we're all together on what we're projecting for next year. And as you heard Jason, prices, lead times, they're terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I won't put that as a future project, but that is normally the time frame where we start coming forward with stuff like that. So I just wanted to let you know.
So capital projects and budgeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's going to be starting next month.
Okay, awesome. Okay, with that, oh, I'm sorry.
Before we adjourn, it was in the live lines, and the guys are already, doing some, working on who
They're
may
registered.
end up going to get registered.
Yeah.
October 18th, MEUW is sponsoring Public Power on Parade. So the idea is to get as many of the MEUW utilities to gather at Wanakee Utilities, and then drive to the state capitol and drive around the capitol, just to
Public
boost
power, yeah.
public power and support of public power in our state.
So we registered 3 trucks, our new bucket truck, our digger truck, and our brand new pickup truck. Since we're one of the closer utilities, we can bring a few trucks, where somebody from up north, they'll bring one. But they want as many trucks as they can, just to get it out there. Public power is.
So just to clarify, this is not protesting anything?
No.
No.
Just
this-
making sure.
They did it last year also.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just.
No,
a-
it's just to boost the
kinda like
importance of
a-
public power in our,
That's
in our
great.
state. And,
Yeah, because it's Public Power Week, I think.
yeah, yeah,
the
so
week
that's
before,
national.
so that's
public power,
nationally
so-
recognized. And then MEUW always tries to put together a legislative day where we just go
Yes.
and meet and, talk about their topics of concern. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
Good. Awesome, thank you. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Sandy. Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Never. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Sign checks to.